This video is sponsored by Rosetta Stone. I made a video about California accents, and I filmed it in San Clemente in Orange County. Half the comments said we don't have an accent. Some other comments said we have tons of accents. And then a big proportion of the comments said, but that's Southern California, you should go to Northern California. So here I am in San Francisco. Not Frisco, not San Fran. You can call it SF if you want, and I have noticed that some locals call it San Francisco in kind of two syllables really, with a very interesting in the middle that I'll have fun trying to transcribe. Interestingly, and a bit like the UK, people call San Francisco Northern California, even though it's pretty much only halfway up the state. So I suppose you then get extreme Northern California, and I'm sure in the comments you're going to tell me to go there next. Anyway, what I'm going to do is interview people here in this place where there are no tourists, just native San Franciscans, and see if their accents differ from those that I encountered in Orange County. Let's see what happens.
They used to talk about dividing the state in half and making it North and Southern California, and the last time they drew it, like mid-90s. Santa Cruz was the northernmost point of Southern California, and the town collectively lost its shit.
I'm Amanda.
And where were you from originally?
San Diego.
I'm Jason.
And yourself?
Chicago.
Yes, I'm Annie.
Annie, and where are you from?
Originally Seattle, but I currently live in San Francisco.
Tracy.
Tracy, lovely to meet you, Tracy. I'm Dave. And you said you're from the peninsula.
Yes.
So that's the Bay Area.
Palo Alto.
Palo Alto. Paul, lovely to meet you. I'm Dave. And you're originally from Arkansas, you were saying?
Yes, I was raised there, moved out here almost be 29 years ago at the end of this month.
You were telling me your name is Amin, and you're originally from Berlin.
Germany, Berlin.
And how long have you lived here in the Bay Area?
Oh, 45 years.
Wow. In much of the English-speaking world, the vowels in rang, rack, and ran are pretty much the same. That's the case in North America with rang and rack, but ran is a special case, as we'll see later. We saw that in Southern California, there was a difference between rang and rack in that people said rang or rain for rang and rack for rack. This is borne out also with our Northern Californians, Dan and Annie.
She rang me back from her van. She rang me back.
She rang me back.
She rang me back.
She rang me back.
He rang me back.
She rang me back.
Something you might have worked out about me by now is that I'm absolutely fascinated by language and I love learning languages. I'm also a stickler for pronunciation. So something I find really useful is Rosetta Stone's voice recognition tool that gives you feedback about whether you're pronouncing things properly in comparison to native speaker accents. You can set the difficulty level from low to high, and of course I always put it on high. I've been learning Swedish recently.
En kostym.
En kostym.
En kostym.
En kostym. You can get a lifelong subscription using the link in the description below or the barcode on the screen that gives you access to all 25 languages for life. As you can imagine, I want to learn all of them. I use Rosetta Stone on my phone and on my computer, and it syncs my progress between them. I really recommend you give it a try. And as I said, there's a link in the description below, and you can click on the barcode. Enjoy. I said I'd come back to Van. And there's a phenomenon across North American accents where the A vowel in words like trap is pronounced higher in the mouth and sometimes as a diphthong, so with a moving tongue, in different environments. One of the environments that this commonly happens in is before an N sound. So you get back, but ban. Or in our case, back. In our case, back, but van. Now, all of our speakers do this.
Van.
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 So Californians have a three-way split between what would be in general American rang back van. Californians say rang back van.
Rain back van.
He rang back van.
Ring back van.
Interestingly, when I asked people what the difference was between their accent, if they weren't from San Francisco, and the Bay Area accent, no one was actually able to identify anything.
I'd say just like little like phrases like hella. They say SoCal, NorCal, Cali, sick. Yeah, just like little words are different.
How about pronunciation things?
Honestly, I don't know.
I have a standard American accent, yes.
So what's the difference between your accent and a Bay Area accent, would you say?
Gosh. Well, Bay Areans are known for saying certain words such as hella, which means very,
Yeah.
extremely. But I don't know. I don't think it's quite distinct.
Instead, they talked about lexical differences, like the fact that in Northern California, people often say things like hella for very. Maybe this is a gross generalization, maybe I'm thinking that Americans aren't very good at hearing accents. And I think there are reasons for that. Most people won't really come across a wide range of different accents in their lives compared to someone in Britain where, in some parts of the country, the accent changes every 10 miles. Generally, though, I think humans are not very good at observing language, which is weird in that it surrounds us all the time and we're doing it for great swathes of our lives day in, day out. People make observations that are patently untrue, which they wouldn't make about, how you walk or how you swim or other kind of common activities. People don't tend to have much of an idea of what's going on in their mouths when they speak and what the relationship is between speaking and writing, for example. I'll do a video on that one day. Interesting things happen to T's in American English. One thing is that when you get historically a T sound between two vowels, it turns into a flap. So instead of ata, you get ara. In words like better, water. This can mean that waiting for a bus can be waiting for a bus or waiting for a bus. A related phenomenon is that the string nt can result in the T disappearing. So you end up with winner and winner for winter and winter. Some people in my previous video said this was a feature of California English, but it really isn't. It's a common thing across most of North America, if not all. You even get it in interesting situations. One I heard recently was Antarctica.
Nobody thought Antarctica was the end of the world. Antarctica is a harsh, punishing, deadly place.
For Antarctica. And somehow you wouldn't expect it to happen there, but it does. Following on the theme of interesting things that happen to T sounds, when you get T followed by N, interesting things happen. Now, you would kind of expect maybe for that to also be a tap, so you get things like kidden, button, but that doesn't happen. It does in Australian English, which also has flaps, but not in North American. Traditionally, what's happened in North American is that you get what's called a nasally released T. So t and n are both pronounced in a similar manner, with they're both alveolar consonants, which means that the tongue is put against the alveolar ridge, which is a ridge kind of behind the top gums. Ta 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 na 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 na. And the difference being that in t you close off the air, then release it as a kind of burst. T, t, t. With the n sound, you close off the air in your mouth, but you let it come through your nose. So, n. So what happens with the combination of t and n, traditionally in American English, is that you combine the two. So you've got t, but, closing closing the airstream at the alveolar ridge, and then letting it through your nose. So, button, 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 kitten, kitten. This is also a feature of the German language, where you get alveolar stops followed by alveolar nasals, ending up as a nasally released consonant with a syllabic nasal, so the sound actually occupies a syllable. For example, in the German spa town of Baden-Baden, which means baths. What's happening more recently in American English is that instead of doing this nasal release, people are putting a glottal stop instead of the T. Now, glottal stop is the sound that you hear when people say, uh-oh, that, and that's a feature of several UK English accents. So, where I'm from, the southeast of England, people, especially working class people, will say things like bottle, butter. So how this comes out in North American English is the pronunciation of kitten instead of kitten.
A written affidavit. I've been threatened. My kids have been threatened.
That's a subtle difference. One of the big things that you can kind of hear the difference in is whether there's a vowel or not. So you've got kitten, where the T kind of comes out through the nose, and so the syllable is n. And then the more recent variety of kitten, where you've actually got a vowel like e or kitten. We have several examples of that in the recording.
What does this button do?
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 As well as what happens to T's, the R, sound in North American English is particularly influential. Now, in many parts of the world, we don't have unless there's a vowel following. But North American accents are known as rhotic, so they do still have this, where there was an R historically in the language, they still say it. And that can influence other things. I was thinking the other day of Jimmy Stewart, who is a classic American actor. Now, James Stewart's pronunciation is pretty much just the man is a walking R. His whole vocal set is dominated by the R sound. If you've never seen a particularly wonderful movie called Rear Window with James Stewart, made in 1954, him and the person who went on to become Princess Grace of Monaco, Grace Kelly. Marvellous, marvellous film. See it. So one of the things that happens before R's in North American English is that some of the distinctions that exist in other environments merge together. So one famous example, and I was really blown away by the first time I heard this, was in a phonetics lecture in England, and a kind person from North America was asked to read the sentence, Mary, Mary, married Harry, Harry, which came out as Mary, Mary, married Harry, Harry. And I think we all laughed. We were all just totally gobsmacked, as we say.
Mary, Mary, married Harry, Harry.
Mary, Mary, married Harry, Harry.
Mary, Mary, married Harry, Harry.
Mary, Mary, married her. Mary, Mary, married Harry, Harry.
Mary, Mary, married Harry, Harry.
Mary, Mary, married Harry, Harry.
Mary, married, oh my God, Harry, Harry.
Pretty much all of the informants that I met in parks in San Francisco did this. I think everybody did. But there are still pockets in the eastern US which do make the difference between Mary, Mary, and marry. Another phenomenon that happens with the vowel plus R is what's known as the mirror-nearer merger, where the sounds in mirror and nearer both end up being mirror. So the I in mirror is pronounced higher up in the mouth as an E sound, mirror. Some people then take this one stage further and get rid of the R sound that used to happen in mirror, and you end up with mirror and mere both coming out as mere.
Mere minutes ago, I looked in the mirror.
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 Mere minutes ago, I looked in a mirror.
Mere minutes ago, I looked in the mirror.
There doesn't really seem to be a geographical distribution of this. Maybe it's about age, but I couldn't really see a pattern in the people I spoke to. I sometimes have coaching clients who tell me their boss is called Don. And I don't know if they mean that their boss is called Don or Dawn, since in the Western US, a phenomenon called the cot-court merger has happened. Well, there's several processes have happened in the history of American English. One is that the vowel in lot has lost, the vowel in lot has lost its rounding, or the vowel in lot has lost its rounding. So words that used to be pronounced spot are now pronounced spot. Further to this, there's also been a phenomenon called the cot-court merger, where in many dialects of English there's a difference between cot, C-O-T, and court, C-A-U-G-H-T. And this distinction has merged in the Western US. So all of our informants pronounce Don and Dawn exactly the same.
Have you met Don and Dawn?
Dawn and Dawn.
Dawn and Dawn.
Dawn and Dawn.
Have you met Dawn and Dawn?
Apart from Justin, who is from Chicago. And Chicago has yet to experience the cot-court merger. So Justin still has rounding in the words that are in the court set. So his Don and Dawn sound different.
Dawn and Don.
Chicago is actually the original home of General American. When the TV networks wanted to choose a standard accent for their broadcasts at the end of the Second World War, and they wanted it to be much more down at home than the British influenced dialect that they'd used before, they chose the Great Lakes variety of American English, which was spoken by successful business people who were travelling around the country. Now, Chicago English has changed quite a bit since then, mainly as a result of a phenomenon called the Northern Cities vowel shift. Now, that involves a change in the vowel that most Americans would have in the word stop, as in stop, that's moved further forward in the mouth. So where most Americans would say stop, people in the northern cities say stop. So stop, stop. In Justin's example, he has in his dawn with the W, he has a back vowel similar to the current modern General American stop, but with rounding. So dawn, and then his Don is much further forward, Don. We can also hear this in his renditions of the words poured and pod, bought and bot.
I bought a new bot. My cat pawed the pod.
Unfortunately, this time round I only had one full day in San Francisco, and it is actually quite difficult to find native San Franciscans or Bay Areans in the city. One good clue, though, is that people with dogs are probably not tourists. Interestingly, there did apparently used to be a San Francisco accent that was very similar to the accents of New York and New Orleans, given the shipping routes. So if you have any elderly relatives that still speak like that, I'd love to speak to them. I think one of the features, which is in common with New York and New Orleans, is what's called the curl-coil merger, where people used to meet on Toity-Toyd Street. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, you'll like these videos here. And hopefully I'll get to travel around the country and the world more making this kind of accent video. Let me know if you think that's a good idea. Bye for now.